I'm gonna make a motion to approve.
I don't know, Speedy.
I wasn't here, so it's hard for me.
I was gonna say, I'm like, this, I'm taking in.
All right, I'll wait for one of you to second.
Thank you, Chance.
Then we can go on. I didn't see anything when I read it.
I'll second it.
Just selling areas, come on.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor? Great. Approved
Done.
as written. Yay. The first thing is new business. Bruce has, I don't know quite how to introduce it, but a petition, right, that you're going to be sending to the select board regarding essentially a carbon taxation. Is that a simple way to introduce the subject? Which he would like to present to us and then the townspeople at large through those who read our minutes.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm Bruce Curtis McLean. I've lived in Jackson for 15 years now. Some of you know my son better than you know me.
Our free wood chips come from the sun.
And I'm kind of out of my comfort zone to be doing something that seems kind of political, but my younger brother has a way of getting me to do things that I wouldn't normally do. And he lives in Plymouth and has been very active in Plymouth seems to be kind of the center of trying to get as many towns as possible in New Hampshire to go on record at town meeting this year supporting a effort to put a price on carbon and to begin dealing with climate change. So I agreed that I would be the Jackson person, at least to get signatures. So I can show you the copy of the petition. It has the wording of the warrant article. And I'm not here to ask for signatures because partly this is kind of a nonpartisan meeting and I think the game. And I think I've got my 25 signatures. It'd be nice to get a few more. And this is a little more information about it. So what's going on is nationwide there's a big effort that some of you may have heard of through the Citizens Climate Lobby actually one of you go ahead and if you want to maybe read the article first before I continue talking. So when I saw in the town minutes, or the town online news that you were meeting tonight, I thought, well, maybe this will be good. You guys would at least like to be aware of what's going on.
That's great.
So I'm not sure if I'm asking for the Conservation Commission to endorse it or support it, but just to tell you a little bit more, some of you may have heard there's different kinds of carbon control efforts going on. The national one, which is described in this little chart here, is actually called House Resolution 763, and it's before the House of Representatives now. Isn't going to go very far, the way our current Congress is. It does have bipartisan sponsors. I think there's maybe like 59 Democrats and 1 Republican sponsoring it, but that's enough to call it bipartisan. And it's pretty simply just the government, our petition is at the state level. And since nothing is happening nationally, a number of states are going ahead and saying if enough states can show that they support it, maybe someday Washington will listen. And so this is happening all over the country, especially states that have town meetings. So if at the state level it can get passed, then it would basically follow what is in this little chart that I've given you. Although that's the national one, there's slight differences between. So New Hampshire's effort is called the Carbon Cashback Coalition, and the federal one is this Carbon Dividend Act. Basically, it's putting the state. The state would put a price on carbon. They basically charge a fee to carbon producers at the head, whether it's the mine or the wellhead, and that gets complicated if you figure out based on the tonnage of carbon that's being put into the air. They would be charged a fee, and the fee would start out fairly small and would quite seriously increase every year. The fees collected, and here's why it's called the carbon cashback, would just be returned right back to the citizens of the state in a yearly check, based equally. So basically you take all the money that's collected, divided by the number of adult citizens of the state, they get a check, and minors under 18 would get half that amount. So the idea is to not penalize people, but gradually the pressure would be that the fees charged to the carbon producers would raise the price of fuel, petroleum-based products especially. And as the cost of those goes up, those companies, well, in order to remain competitive, they're going to be, trying to raise their prices as little as possible. People who are going to now be facing higher gas prices, fuel prices, and so forth, are going to eventually begin considering, next time I buy a car, maybe I want to go for a car that gets better gas mileage. The idea isn't that the money that comes back to you, you could just say, well, I get the money back, so I'll just keep driving my big car, and the increase in the price of gas gets covered by the check that I get each year. But probably most people aren't going to do that. If you get a check at the end of the year for, eventually it could be $3,000, you might say, I've got something else I'd rather spend that $3,000 on rather than just, more expensive gas for my car. So the petition is to get this on the agenda at town meeting and see if the town will support it, and if enough towns in New Hampshire support it, eventually Concord will get the message. And as things are now, the way things are now, I think Governor Sununu has pretty much said he would veto it. So we're not, it's not going anywhere as far as really enacting a law in New Hampshire yet, but enough states, the idea is to keep trying. And now worldwide, Canada just started it, very much exactly like this system last year. So Canada has started it, quite a few countries have some form of carbon fee going. So I'm not sure, I could answer some questions. This little chart basically, makes it sound pretty simple. You pay a fee, you get your money back at the end of the year. As far as who would be impacted the most, they call it the average family, could actually be getting more back than they're paying out in their increased costs, because some really heavy users are going to be paying a lot more than they're getting back. So a low-income family could certainly come out ahead if they don't have a big home, use a lot of fuel, and so forth. A very wealthy person with multiple homes and private plane or whatever is going to come not get anywhere near back what they're paying in increased costs. But the logic of it is, and it seems pretty simple, is that eventually pressure everywhere is going to steer people in the direction of renewable resources. And as the little graph here talks about, yet certainly there are going to be costs to saving the environment, but millions of jobs they forecast will be created because of the increase in solar and other kind of renewable energy will produce a lot of jobs, and eventually prediction, if this could really work, in 12 years, a 40% reduction in carbon emissions, which is enormous and way more than we're doing now. So I wanted the commission to be aware of this. So we'll get onto the warrant article. The town meeting warrant, because we have enough signatures. If anybody wants to sign it, they can see me later. I'm not sure about how you go about it at a meeting. I guess, Tom, you've already done it last night. So I'd be happy to answer some questions if you have them. And I'm not sure, politically how this works. Yes, Bill?
Ken.
Ken.
Just a quick question here, because I think these kind of questions would come up at a town meeting. But when it says collected to all residents on an equal basis, and I'm just reading from the actual resolution itself, is that on a per capita basis?
It says collected from all residents on an equal basis?
Yeah. And rebates the money collected to all residents
Oh, the
on an
money
equal
collected
basis.
will be rebated,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, that's based on the populated, I guess, citizens and residents of the state.
Okay.
And I think it does.
Because your example, the example given over here is a family of 4. And obviously you can have a family that has anything from a 3-month-old baby to,
I think a family of 4 would have 2 adults and 2 kids. And
Yeah.
so the adults would each get 100% of the, whatever equal dividend is, and the kids would get 50%.
so it is prorated based on whether it's a child in the family. At least that's the concept.
Yes, but not based on the age of the child. I think anyone under 18 would get half.
And yet the distribution would be determined finally in legislation itself. Is that correct? Not, that's the concept here, but the actual rebate program would be determined by legislation.
Yes, yeah, the rebate would be part of the proposed legislation. Yeah. It's a little bit like, it's actually just the opposite, but in a way, it's like Alaska produces so much oil,
Right.
and they tax it, and my daughter and my grandchildren live in Alaska. The 3-year-old gets a check in the mail every, for $1,500 or something for his share of Alaska's oil bonanza. So this will be hurting them. Well,
Is that
my brother gave me an example. He said, well, one way to have people understand this is pollution right now, carbon is just being put into the atmosphere and nobody's paying for it. It's the carbon producers are getting a free ride. So it'd be like if the guy who comes to pump your septic tank goes down and just dumps it on the town common. You can't do that. He pays a fee and has to have dumped in a specific place. Yes.
I probably missed this, but how much do you expect the tax to be incurred at the pump?
Well, I think the proposal is to charge a $15. Well, the New Hampshire one is $20 a year. The federal one is $15 a year per ton, I think, of carbon that's put into the air. And then, so you need somebody with way more math skills than me to figure out how they do that. But again,
So I'm just trying to figure out, I figured that the tax is going to be, there's going to be some increase on gasoline prices
absolutely.
that you pay at the pump.
And that would be up to the companies. And of course, they don't want to raise their price any more than one of their competitors does, because they want to sell you gas. So hopefully this is going to force them to seek alternative sources of energy that are cheaper, because people are going to stop wanting to spend as much on gas. And that's the whole purpose of this, is eventually to wean us away from carbon-based petroleum products.
The other question I had is at least, just, and I'm fairly familiar with some of these programs. It says charge a fee on the fossil fuel at the source, which generally means when it's mined.
Mhm.
New Hampshire doesn't really produce a lot of what this income stream is talking about here. It would be dependent on the fee generated, like in
Yeah,
West
and I
Virginia or
don't totally
something.
understand that, yeah. I was told, like, in New Hampshire, I guess the fee would be charged, like with the tanker that arrives in Portsmouth and, you know,
Okay,
brings the oil to New Hampshire, and then the fee would be charged there.
okay.
And the idea is, if enough states would adopt it on their own, if the federal government then ever does adopt it nationwide, then the state ones would cease to exist. The federal one would take over.
So basically assuming that the extra money is assessed when the oil comes into the state, that extra cost would be passed on to the consumer probably,
With
or some portion of it.
increased electricity bills and everything and so
Right.
forth, yeah. And
So it's
then-
not just like, gasoline is gonna be electric and, heating fuel oil and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, and products that, plastics. I'm not sure how they're gonna figure it all out, but, products that are made that use petroleum are also carbon producers.
Thanks for
Oh, and I don't know if as far as introducing or doing this at town meeting, I'm definitely not a good person for doing that. So I'm kind of looking for, and I don't know whether the commission would have any recommendations. I've got a few feelers out. I'm looking for somebody who's just a little more politically minded who would like to be the spokesperson at town meeting. It's also possible I'm going to be away because I need to go to Alaska to visit my daughter's family. I don't know if that's something the commission really wants to put someone forward or has a
historically
recommendation.
run away.
Excuse me?
We historically run away as fast as we can about speaking at town meeting.
Oftentimes, none of these guys show up.
That's true. I think the last kind of similar scenario was the solar and wind power item. A couple that came up a couple times, and
You guys didn't even show up for the fence.
yeah. I don't know. I forgot with that petition if we. I don't know if we voted in favor of that petition or not.
We did. Yeah, we endorsed it. It went as a warrant article, and it was said, Conservation Board endorses 6-0 or whatever it was.
Is that something we might want to do tonight, I guess?
It's something we could do. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I know, I like it, I love the idea.
Yeah, Ken is our resident expert on carbon pricing. I was wondering how it all would interact with the Reggie agreement, or be on top of, or in addition to, or.
I'm sorry, what was
I was
that?
wondering, there's the regional greenhouse gas initiative
Oh.
for the New England states and part of maritime
Yeah,
Canada.
that's a cap and trade system, which is different. It's-
And and Sununu pulled us out of that
Yeah.
anyway.
Oh, did he? Ah,
Yeah.
right. I was not aware of that. I haven't been following my news long enough.
And that's like peanuts compared to what this proposal is as far as the amount of carbon that it actually reduces. And like that would disappear too if this was adopted by, I think the New Hampshire one, they said New Hampshire wouldn't adopt it until at least two bordering states also adopted it. Just so
This, you mean, or the
the state one,
Yeah.
yeah.
New Hampshire has normally been the last to sign on to anything. It's including like car cafe standards, etc.
Yes. yeah.
We just take advantage of the fact that our sister states do it. And it's not worth the time for the car industry to ship in anything different.
Yeah, like the bottom
Yeah.
bill. Well, thank you for listening. Is there anybody who didn't get, or would like, got a few more copies of this?
Do you know of any resources if we wanted to learn more about
Yes.
at the state level, kind of more specifics as far as
Yes.
what they're proposing?
Yes.
Is there a website or?
There is. This is the Citizens Climate Lobby, which their website is talks about the federal issue.
Okay.
If you look up, just Google carbon cashback, New Hampshire. Let's see if I forward then.
I think
Anybody would like, if anybody'd like to see that? And yeah, I mean, here, I should have written that out, if anyone wants to. Here's the site for the New Hampshire one. bit.ly/Carbon Cashback Coalition, with a hyphen between each of those words. Carbon-cash-back-coalition. And that has some, a lot of pull-down menus, which are worth looking at, because the menus have quite a bit more information on them too.
This is the best of what the proposed petition warrant article. Some other stuff with it.
Do we have time? Wait, when's town meeting? Do we have time to look at this and then vote on it at our next meeting?
Yes.
In time? Okay.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, we
in
do, right?
February, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I think this is important, and I think lots of people would want to know what the Conservation Commission thinks about it. And I think I don't know anything about it right now. So before I'm asked publicly, I'd love to look it up a little bit, and then we can either endorse it or do whatever we want with it at the next meeting.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Great. I don't know if you want to provide your information publicly, if people want to contact you for more information?
Oh,
or-
absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. You sound like someone who might like to present at the town meeting.
I don't know. Not non-committal sound.
Looking less committal.
Okay, well, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Appreciate you putting the time into it.
Enjoy your dinner with Ryman. Tell him good luck on his hike.
Yeah, he's off tomorrow.
Where'd he go?
The Florida Trail.
Oh, wow. Spending some time in the water.
He's finished the water part of it.
Oh, okay.
You're familiar with it?
I had a friend that was on trail crew for it for like 6 months and then hiked it, and he said he spent a lot of time.
It was the first 3
Like
days
good water.
you're in water, like up to here with snakes and alligators and.
Boa constrictors.
Would you say Washington? No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
All right. Here's the new business. Again, I was thinking we kind of skip over the details of the usual Prospect Farm, Jackson Falls, Gray's Inn, unless people have particular items they wanted to address at this point in time, and go on to conservation easements and our annual report. And specific, is that all right with everyone? Yep. Again, this is kind of the moment we can catch our breath and think about what the big things are for next year. So I encourage everyone to do that and think about what it is obviously the falls, but which of those 3 properties we would focus our attention on, or other issues for 2020. And just a reminder for the easements, we should be getting our reports to Spinneth for those of us that do conservation monitoring. And just before I started driving down here from work, I tried to share the information again on how to do that, in case you want to dig up the email from last year. How to fill out the Spinneth part of those.
It's absolutely no change from mine, but I haven't got it in, so.
Yeah, and I put mine in and I realized when I did it.
Do those actually have the language of the conservation easement, or is it just a checklist?
They are a checklist.
The checklist, no information.
Yeah, we have some of the easements over there in the corner, and I actually don't think we have literal copies of every easement, which would be a good thing to actually have.
It has to
where
be
we
read
did
the easement.
I know, every year I check
You
now
read
when
it.
I resolve to go read the actual easement and
Yeah.
I don't. So that was a pretty easy one. And I'll try to share, actually, speaking of that, I've been trying to put all the documents I have in Google Docs with that account that I use, and I'll try to share all of the folders so that we can all see everything there all of the time. And it's not just sitting in a place where I can see all the electronic versions of everything.
That would be useful.
And maybe even go back and scan some of the things that were handed down on by paper to us. You know, like I know when I joined the commission, there was a nice binder that said, "Welcome to the Conservation Commission," you know, and that we haven't updated and it only exists on paper to my knowledge. Anyway, I'm trying to share what I've got. All right, on to the annual report. I don't know if everyone had a chance to read it. I printed out a version that Ken had marked up with his corrections, suggestions for the last year. And I
Editorials, they weren't corrections.
also figured this would be a good way to remind us of what we've accomplished over the last year and then to kind of think about next year. And I think the first step would be ordering what we're going to do for fall. Jackson Falls in the springtime, or whether we're ordering plants or not. But I think the February meeting, we can still order things from the nursery or later for the blueberries, which you would know more about once we have seen if we like that approach or not. All right. Yeah. So have at my draft, if you don't mind. All 7 of us can edit it together.
Ken took a good crack at it today.
Yes.
See, on Prospect Farm Forestry, I did talk to Don Johnson just recently. He's been very busy, but he is preparing a proposal
Okay.
for upgrading the time schedule. And I think he may try to make the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he wants to bring the man who will be his replacement with him so that we meet him, which I think would be good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can get the information to him about the desires for logging other than during ski season.
Yeah, and it seems and our big picture is to, take his forestry plan, make it updated to what's on the ground, but then encapsulate it in a larger, basically overall management plan.
Yep.
Stating the town's wishes for the property, and forestry is one component of that.
He wants to get up there, walk it, see what the last cuts have produced, how they're doing, if they're on line with what he projected for regeneration and just
Yeah.
what they're all about.
Does it make sense to develop a forestry management plan if the intention in the immediate future is not to cut? Which is different than to say the intention is not to cut into the future. The only reasons I ask this is, I'm on the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation, and we've also had some forestry management plans developed, but the reality is they go out of date
Mm-hmm.
if you don't cut like in the next 4 or 5 years. And if you're constantly paying to update these, but you don't have an intention to cut, you might as well almost wait until you get close to the time that you intend to cut, and then spend your money to get an up-to-date product, as opposed to doing 2 or 3 series of this is what you can do, but there's no real motivation to proceed ahead to do it. Then essentially it's just money down the drain. And I'm not advocating that you shouldn't cut. I'm just simply asking, if there's no motivation to cut at the time, then these can become just dollar sinks.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, how long ago was the last cut?
Over 6 years.
Yeah, 6 or
But
7
we
years ago.
cut an awful lot in a very short period of time because we got behind, I think.
Well, the Forest Service was already cutting, so we took advantage of the fact that we couldn't use it for skiing and the roads were being updated.
I remember when Dexter came in and he said, can you please not cut again, because so much had been cut at one time. Do you guys
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
It's before my time on the
Yeah.
on the
No, what
commission.
happened-
It was an ongoing cut, though.
It's because we got behind, and so they did like the 5-year, the 10-year, and then they wanted to do the next one because, you know, the loggers were already there, and that's when people started coming in and saying, too much. People actually started to come in.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been.
Well,
that
yeah,
long.
I think it appeared it was definitely a combination of the fact that the Forest Service was also cutting up there. So we really did lose access for a couple of years.
Yeah, I guess my ultimate interest is to have a document for Prospect Farm that would, I don't know, I mean, maybe the select board has this, that would encapsulate all of it, including things like, I don't know how the Forest Service planning process goes as far as what their plans are, you know, since the roads go through town
Right.
property to get there, to have one information source where it's like, this is the big picture for the town-owned property, what the town intends to do with it, period, and then how we achieve those goals, whether it's like partnering with ski touring to create new trails, or making sure that winter recreation's available, or cutting on the various levels recommended by the experts
Yeah.
at whatever time for whatever reasons. And I feel like we don't have that document or, you know, resource anywhere in the town. It kind of exists in many people's minds, but I could be wrong in that.
Yeah, maybe this already exists, but my thought was that this wasn't necessarily a specific management plan for specific cutting, but like a broader scope, like, hey, we're identifying a section of like, this is probably an area that's never going to get touched. Like, this is an area that's not going to get touched. And like mirroring basically kind of what the Forest Service does, like, hey, we're going to make sure that we've got X percentage of very young, you know, successional forest, X percentage of, you know, promoting old growth forest, you know, X percentage that's going to be maintained, you know, aesthetically for views, things like that. Like, and maybe that already exists, and I just don't know it. But that was kind of my thought, and it was like, okay, in the sections that are getting cut based on soil type and with climate change, we're mostly going to be promoting, you know, these 2 to 3, 4 species, you know, of late successional species of trees or something. That's kind of what I had kind of thought it would be, like a broader stroke versus like this specific, you know, management plan. Hey, over the next 5 years, we're going to look at taking out X, Y, and Z and that sort of thing. That was kind of my thought. Maybe that already exists in the older management plan. I don't know that question. No, that was kind of my thought. We like look at the map and it's like, okay, we identified these soil types, we identified these, you know, these systems. Here's what we're gonna cut. Here's where we're gonna promote, you know, old growth or older, you know, late successional species, things like that. That's kind of what
There
I
are
thought.
some references, but not what
Yeah.
you're describing.
So for like basically a document that would then help guide the cutting that, you know, the cutting that then takes place. That's more, you know, long-term vision. That's kind of what I thought we were going to have him do, but maybe I'm totally wrong on that.
I don't remember what the original plan specified for timescale, whether like a 10-year cycle, but on any forestry plan, I mean, 10 years, 15 years,
Right.
it doesn't make the, you pick a good year to do it, either a great seed year,
Yeah.
you know, where you're going to scarify the soil and get great regeneration of white birch or whatever, pine. So I think it's not specific, you know, in 8 years we're going to do this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of to generalize where we're headed with the property.
Right, goals.
And, you know, it's a long-term, we're one little spot on the whole map. So as far as timeline, we're trying to do it nicely, and, you know, we're certainly not looking to overlog it, but we'd like to manage it. I mean, I think that's the idea.
If you can project out a generation's worth of understanding or two, yeah.
So I guess I was thinking a little bit with Tin Mountain for our bear paw lands. We have about 1,000 acres of lands it's active timber lands, and we have a couple of really slim documents that are essentially the very long-term management plans, and they're maps, and it's like they go and they identify soil types, they identify habitat types, and and then kind of what we're promoting for, it's broken into like, you know, make this up, 15 different zones.
Mhm.
And it's like, how are we managing each zone over the long term? You know, and not like, oh, this is gonna get cut on April 3rd, you know, every 5th year or whatever, but it's kind of just broken down by zones and like, what are the kind of guiding parameters for that zone? Because there's some that are on like, there's like mountain bike trails. So it's like, okay, so like for this zone, because of these mountain bike trails, there's gonna be very limited, you know, cutting, that sort of thing.
So who did those plans and what were the plans called?
It's a forest management plan. Yeah, that was Dr. Klein that did it. But I mean, we've got, you know, our new forester is Dan Stepanowski, is who now has taken over since then. But I'm sure Don Johnson could also create the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be great if you could come to the next meeting and we could kind of talk through it with him, and we could all do our homework and read the existing management plan.
Oh, I think he'd love the input, he likes to tailor the whole thing to what our desires are.
Yeah.
Plus, he's a good sounding board for us. If you come up with an idea and he says, you know, that really doesn't work, it's nice to know that ahead of time. Then we don't have to waste time saying, what about, you know, something that's not going to be viable.
Dick, what was his first name again? Don Johnson.
Yep.
And you
Forest
say,
land improvement.
you say he's retiring soon? Did you say he was retiring soon?
Yes,
Yeah.
He's been saying that for a couple of years.
we thought it was 40 years. That's a good span for a forester.
It is.
Yeah.
I understand. I think when we had him here a couple of years back, he was saying, well, I'm thinking about only doing this for another year.
And luckily, foresters institutionally live long lives. Well, because they don't have the pressure, you know. Just like I said, you know, yeah, this year, next year, 5 years, you know, it's not go, go, go like builders or people like that.
Does this require a budget? I mean, if we're gonna hire him
Yeah.
and we're coming into needing to put in a budget for the Conservation Commission, it's a
I think
question.
that's another good reason to have them in. We can raise the money at this coming town meeting.
When do we have to submit? I mean, like, since I've been here, we've always had the rubber stamped $2,000 ask budget line
Right.
based off the mowing that we no longer do. So we essentially have, well, no, that we no longer pay for directly, you know. But so
But say if we spent
Yeah.
that, you could say, okay,
yeah,
we'd like to have our cushion
yeah,
plus the money we just spent for the forestry
yeah.
upgrade.
Well, that's only partly true, because if we decide to do some more revegetation at the falls, that was
Yeah.
like $600.
Yep.
And,
Plus the loan you left.
yeah, and we're gonna see whether it,
Do a few
holds
more
through the
plots,
winter, but
yeah.
right now it looks good. But
Yeah.
if we went back and did more of that, you'd burn up your 2,000 almost immediately.
Yes, yeah, yeah. We could definitely get an actual budget and ask for an increase. The other approach which we've had is basically the mowing, and came like the 2,000 paid for the mowing, and then everything else came out of the other money, the other
Yeah.
accounts that we have.
But the
Rather than
mowing
town.
now is being picked up in a different budget, is that
It's coming out of the recreation budget, part of the town.
the town recreation?
And it's basically it comes out of that unless those funds are depleted, and then it comes out of the Conservation Commission budget. We've kind of approached capital improvements. I mean, this is my take on how Larry ran the commission.
Yeah.
Capital improvements came out of the change of use fees that are just piling up in the Conservation Commission's account, and then in order to keep our budget as low as possible, we really just kept that 2,000 at 2,000 and took everything else out of,
I don't know if there's been much change of use though.
I mean, that account is, I haven't looked at it in like a year, but it's sitting probably at $20,000 to $30,000 that we have access to. So those are the two ways we can fund projects, either taking from that $20,000 to $30,000 that's
Yeah.
sitting there from the change in use fees, or ask for an increase
Maybe do both.
Yeah, we can do both. Take a guess at Don's fee plus the, guess that we'll spend at least $1,000 at the falls. Usually, and that would leave, I don't know if Don would cost $1,000 or trying to guess last time. So say, we put it.
I would guess it would be a couple thousand. I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
As I recall, the last time we spoke with him, it was going to be somewhere around $1,500.
Yeah, I think it's about 12.
That was a few years ago, though.
But
He's
if,
older and smarter.
He's
now.
smarter, yeah, yes.
but the second question is, because I do agree with you, Tom, that we need more than a forest management plan there. We need an update on the total plan. Because if you just do the forestry independent of the recreation and so on and so forth, they become disjunct and they start to conflict with each other. And I don't know whether Don is the right person to look at the other components. I don't know the individual, so I can't say, but he might be very good at forestry, but then the question is, because that is a multiple use area, there's no question about it.
Yep, definitely. And I guess that having a person that, my thought was having a paid professional to do it maybe more with our input, but would facilitate the process, whether it's whomever it is doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know very many foresters or others to pick and choose. So I don't know if I'm inviting him here and asking him if this would be a good fit for him would be a good way to approach it, or or asking around for others. But since they did do the work on the original plan,
I think I'm going to see Dan tomorrow, actually.
Oh, okay.
And so I could ask him if there are people that would be specifically kind of fit for a recreation management, forest management plan as well, if we want additional names.
Yeah, could be good. All right, so we should try to get him here for the next month's meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. See if it's a good fit. Ask for extra money. Ask for something.
I'll get back to him because I lied to him. I told him the meeting started at 7. I'll correct that.
7.
It's approaching bedtime. Yeah, that would be a great achievement for next year, is to, if we could get that done and kind of have that in writing finally, because I feel like that's been floating around the ad hoc management plan for.
Do you know who the replacement is? Who his replacement is, Dick?
Hmm?
Do you know who his replacement to be is?
Tim, his last name will come back to me tomorrow.
I'm just trying to think if he's told me.
I can find that out quick enough. I know him too. It's just not correlating right at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Can appreciate that.
I'm not the only one.
Oh, absolutely not.
Do you know when we have to have our budget request to be ready for town meeting? Is there a deadline for that?
Should ask a selectman.
Yeah. Is there a date by which we, like, would our next meeting be enough time to come up with an estimated budget for next year?
I think so. We're right at that. We're dealing with all
Because
of
we're
this.
early enough in the month in February that we should be able to do
Okay.
In February 3rd or 6th or something. It's the drop dead date.
Oh, good. That's
We
very
have
close.
a moment.
Yeah,
So
very quick.
what you might want to do is just automatically pencil in an additional $2,000
Yes, yeah,
and put that out there, and then we can hone that number
yeah,
a little bit. If it's 2,200 or 1,800, then not a big deal, but I don't think it's going to be 5,000. I don't think it's going to be that.
yeah. I like that idea, so we'd bump it up to 4,000 for the next year.
I think that might be something we can do right now. And
You don't know if you don't ask.
Yeah. All right.
And
the worst that could happen is we ask for too much. We have to give it back.
And I can't remember in the last logging cut, Did the income from that go to the Conservation Commission or did it go to the general fund?
I believe it went to the Conservation Commission, but again, I would know that from reading, not from being here.
I don't know.
And what was that?
That was
from?
I can't remember where the funds, the income from the last cutting, whether it went into the general fund or whether it went to the Conservation Commission.
I think I might be wrong on both.
I think it went to the general fund.
I was going to say the Conservation Commission because I almost think the deed speaks about this, but I'm not positive.
And did anything come out of current use anytime recently?
Like a year.
Because half of that money is supposed to come to the Conservation.
Yes, the last one I heard of was like a year ago. That something came out of current use, maybe a little over a year ago.
Well, it'd be something.
It was a
to
warm
check.
month when Julie told me about it.
Well,
So whether it was last summer or the summer
because
before.
Sometimes that can get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie. I mean, Julie has notified me when it has been added to it. So I know definitively in the last 2 years whether it was the summer or the summer before.
So they just put it into the Conservation Commission account
Yes.
or
Yeah.
column?
Yep.
Being the newbie on the commission, Tom, the 20 to 30,000 that you were talking about, did that come about because of current use changes, or did that come about through other sources as well?
I believe, well, definitively, it's half of the once things come out of current use, half goes to the Conservation
Right.
Commission. And I also believe any income from Prospect Farm goes into that, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
Alright. So do we need a motion? I should never ask for a reason for the 4,000. Alright, would anyone like to make a motion to ask for 4,000? Any seconds?
Would that, sorry, real quick, would that also include, we talked about signs both at the falls and at Prospect at some point? Would that be factoring those in as well? or-
Yeah, so it would quickly be, it would be, say, 1,500 for a forestry plan, 1,000 for the falls.
But if you're doing
Yeah.
a recreation as well, and you paid 1,500 last time just for a forest plan, and you're gonna bring somebody in to also help on the recreation, then you're in excess of the 1,500 just based on.
For sure,
cost.
yeah.
Yeah.
The money for the signs, we're gonna ask about the Wildcat Trust for that, or the whatever it's called,
Wild and scenic.
there's that pot of money that's
Yeah.
just for the wild, just for stuff on the
Oh,
Wildcat
the,
River.
Yes.
is that the East Side Walk?
East Side Walk.
Yeah. There is a trust fund specifically for basically Jackson Falls to the Stone Bridge, for which we can apply for funds, which is how we got the
That's an
money.
internal Jackson.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That's how we got the money for the fence up at the falls, was through that trust.
I thought at one point we had talked about using that for sign money too, because I know that's quite a bit of money.
Can't hurt to ask.
Yeah, they have a fair amount of money. It's the trust is like most. You can spend the income, and it hasn't been until we asked for the fence money. It
Right,
hasn't been
right.
touched in like I don't know a very long time.
Yeah.
Can that be used for the sod as well?
Potentially could, yes.
Mhm.
Because if you put 2 of those, pallets of sod, it's gonna be $1,200 just for the sod,
Yeah.
not including the loam and the other materials. Yeah, I put peat and a little bit of compost under it.
Yeah, and that yes, we could do that way. I believe we'd have if I have to go read it again.
Yeah, I'd be surprised we hadn't attempted to yet pull from that. But
And who do we have to ask in order to?
yeah, I mean, why would it's always been for any improvement on that side of the river.
It's
Is it a trust with a trustee, or is it?
yes,
Yeah.
it is a trust.
So
and
it's
trustee.
not necessarily a town.
It is now a town. I don't know if town trust is the right phrase, but it's administered by the town trustees, and I believe it originally was not.
Trustees of the trust
It
fund.
originally wasn't through the town, right?
It originally wasn't through the town. I believe it came through the town.
So now
over
it goes to
time.
the trustees of the trust
Yeah.
funds?
And it's a written application, so when we applied for the fence, we had to maybe have a 2-page document that probably showed what we did and what it was gonna cost with a real estimate. Anyway, yes, so that money could come that way. All right.
So increase
that- yeah.
from the 2,000 with an additional 2,000. So 4,000 total would be asking for, as
Yes,
opposed to 2.
and that, so that would be just forestry plan, potentially a second individual for a recreation plan. That would link those things together. The falls, we're saying maybe 1,500, but we might not want,
Right, might get it elsewhere.
might get it elsewhere. So I'd be comfortable asking for 4,000.
Yeah.
And then if we can get some of it from grants, and if not, we can fall back to the other money.
And the recreation aspect might be something that's in-house with Don to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, he manages other properties. Town
Yeah,
properties.
I can see the forestry plan incorporating recreation
Yeah.
management.
And some of the plots they manage are used for recreation as well.
Great. All right, so the motion stands for, ask for $4,000 instead of $2,000. Anyone to second it? Any seconds?
I'll second that.
Second. All right, all in favor of asking for $4,000? Great. We would like to ask for $4,000. Smallest item on the town budget. Except for supporting the airport.
I was gonna say the Freiburg Airport.
The Freiburg Airport, there is, yeah.
No,
What about Valley Vision?
Ask
We
us,
can,
yeah.
All right, that's the future. Want to finish the past? See if there's any other edits to our last year?
For Gray's Inn, can we write a quick line in that the library, along with other community organizations, utilize the property for events?
The trails?
Yeah, the trails. They
Oh,
use,
okay.
yeah, they use the Gray's, yeah.
I didn't know that.
They do, they have their book walk out there.
Yeah, they do the book walk out there, and then they also had a big winter solstice celebration out behind the library on those trails. And I don't know, just
No, I think it's good.
it's always like Gray's Inn, nothing.
No, I think that's cool, tying in the library and.
Yeah, so that way
What other
Really
organizations
energy
use it?
Maybe somebody can inform me. The other day I went around the Mystery Loop. I'd never been around it. But then there's another trail that keeps going. And then it finally comes up and connects over to Nesselnook.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that part of the Mystery Loop?
No.
That goes off
Off
the
town,
town
yeah.
line.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can still go to, you can go from there up to Wigglesworth Ledge. There's actually a really quite a nice network in there.
Yeah, I hadn't realized until I got into it the other
Blue
day.
Blaze is all the way down to Christmas Mountain. Yeah. I've never seen it. You've never been to Wigglesworth?
No.
Telling you guys, we gotta do a conservation committee walk out to
Snowshoe.
Wigglesworth.
A snowshoe.
There's actually quite a bit of.
Is there a
trails.
map of those?
Yes, Old Jackson Ski Tour map, if you find one
The old-
from
Okay.
the 80s, I have like an 83 map, I think, that comes up on there. Yeah, I go out there a lot,
Yeah.
keep things clean. I never see anybody.
So
I
we'll
found
have
a
to,
rig
we'll have to
one
have,
time.
we'll have to have.
Well, I
a
started
snowshoe.
finding the blue markers and I started following them.
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing.
But those were the old Jackson blue markers.
Yes, yeah. there's
Because you
no-
can find those going out towards your place, Dick.
Oh, the Blue Diamond?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the 1970s, I think.
Yeah.
They can
Well,
lead you down
I
the
was
garden
walking
path.
around Avery Calder,
Right.
Okay,
figuring out where.
I'm glad you solved the mystery.
Yeah, well, that's only one of the mysteries. Yeah, you'll pop up at Jack Wine's house, like
Well, I know I passed,
almost in his back, almost right at his.
yeah, I went past that, and then
Yeah,
finally I looked around and came over, and then it hit the Nesselnook trails.
right.
And
If
came
you,
down.
before you drop down, if you'd taken another left, you'd have gotten onto another trail that brought you up to the.
Broad tip, okay, I'll have to try that.
And there's
next
like a
time.
weird snowshoe sign out there.
Alright,
and
alright.
It's like a boot, it's a snowshoe trail, but it's actually just a boot. It's kind of funny. It's just,
I almost think it's a deer yard, because there's a lot of deer tracking.
yeah.
A lot of hunting.
Peter Minich brings a lot of, that's where he does a lot of his
Okay.
snowshoe stuff up through there for Jackson. So yeah, it's a good quiet spot.
All right, a lot of sentence about the library.
Yeah.
Programming on trails.
You see the new trail? What marked in their box?
I've walked it many a time, I haven't skied it.
I saw they groomed it, I got on it.
Yeah. I spent more time with the Jackson Water Precinct in the state on the little bridge.
Oh, I bet.
So now you can ski to dinner if you want.
Exactly.
Did they end up being able to leave that in,
Huh?
the bridge?
I don't know, I haven't heard back yet from Scott because the Water Precinct had to submit the variance to the wetland permit. And I haven't heard back from the Water Precinct yet what's happened, so.
I have one very nitpicky comment. Should it say, in the last paragraph, should it say 1,172 acres of land, either between or spread across Jackson and Bartlett rather than in both Jackson and Bartlett?
So it's not a total
That's
of
right.
2,000?
Yeah, you're right, but, yeah.
Damn engineers.
I don't know if that's engineering.
No, it's just because it's the best.
Sentence engineering.
All right, then between.
Although I'm thinking
Letters
maybe it should
are
be,
numbers too, Tom.
maybe not
If you're
between,
liberal,
because
between
makes
means
it
there's
sound like
something
it's right between them, but
How did they do
spread
that?
across or
Alright.
cumulative 1,172 between, yeah.
The land in between Jackson and Bartlett. Jacklet.
Have any of you guys walked any of that? It's kind of off the beaten path stuff. I've done a little bit of exploring.
Just a little bit behind Tin Mountain, but
Yeah,
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of that
yeah,
in the past.
that's cool.
And I don't know if this includes also the part that the Forest Service would pick up off of East Pasture.
Right. On that note, that property that sold, isn't there a piece of land that sold just outside Ann Peterson's
I don't
last
know.
year? I thought there was a piece that sold.
You mean if the trails go on?
Do you guys have anything to add to
Yeah,
the changes?
so her,
the only other thing that I maybe would clarify is the second to last paragraph. Commission provided a volunteer member to receive training in road culvert assessment in order to help maintain a state database. I did the training through HEB, but the Conservation Commission requested that I be able to provide data on behalf of the Conservation Commission. And the only reason that I would clarify that is because I think it would maybe make sense if anyone from the Conservation Commission, on behalf of the Conservation Commission, wanted to go down to that training, they could. So if
because
there's
it's
just
still
another,
a spot.
Yeah.
right, exactly. If there's another member of the commission that wants to
Come trained.
be trained and able to submit data to that database. I think it's in April or May, so.
Culvert specialist.
Yeah, yeah.
A volunteer from the commission who was already trained
Or
agreed
yeah.
to act on behalf of the commission.
Um,
A member of the commission, an already trained member of the commission. I also just thought about writing Jeff does a lot of stuff for this section.
He does a lot of stuff.
I'm not sure. I feel like I'm confident that you could.
All right.
I don't think it
Change
needs to change, but it could if there was someone from the Conservation Commission that wanted to go down on.
But this is, basically for the year that's been, so
Right.
how would you describe it then? That should be included or not?
Oh, yeah, it should be included for sure. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, I don't think it's.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I think mainly the point I want to make is that if
Right, we communicate.
this year someone from the Conservation Commission wants to go on behalf of the Conservation Commission, then they should.
And still can.
We can.
Got it. Did I miss anything big also?
No, I was trying to think if anything ever happened with the Forest Service and the water precinct and the old dam, but it's like somehow another year goes by and you get excited for nothing. Well, there's massive piles of stone.
That's a real headache for the ski touring
Yeah,
foundation.
I was
I was
just
gonna
looking.
say, are they in that little, they're in that little field that is right off the trail? Actually,
Well, they're nice with that landing that they made.
I don't think the water precinct has all the funding they would need to do what's necessary there, which is part of the challenge.
Yeah, I just can't imagine if they just tried to get that in there to get first phase, which was just committing to doing material work.
Yeah.
Well,
which is probably a lot of trucking. I'm
Yeah,
sure
it
it costs a
was.
lot of money to move on the gravel and the stone.
it's like, if we get all this stuff here, they'll never tell us we can't do it. Okay. So, yeah, there it stands.
Print stuff at work.
Sure did.
It's the old logo.
It is.
It's not even the old logo, it's the old logo. You know?
Oh, yeah.
The tree's still inside.
Yeah.
I've got some old Wentworth, like menu stack paper that I think, it's incredibly awesome paper. That we flip it over, people are like, go ahead.
All right, I will submit this with the one extra sentence then about the library. Anything else?
No.
All right. Anyone want to end the meeting? You volunteer to end the meeting?
I make a motion to end this meeting.
Second. All right. Thank you, everyone. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tom.
Thank you.
Warm.
Thank you very much.
So where's
My feet are freezing.